Hey, um, you know, the obsession with collecting records is a relatively new ph- phenomenon. I think it started in the 80s. No one gave a shit about records before then. It was just something you put on and your girlfriend picked up and threw in a corner or something. But something went wrong. The treasuring and worshipping of bits of vinyl, which is made from oil, and which is like dinosaur muck that's floating under the ground. So before record collecting, I'm 70 this year, and I just thought I'd do a brief history of things that were collectible. Um, I do believe it's just I'm trying to get you people to spread your mania for collecting elsewhere. These things are called stamp albums. These are pictures of Croatian fascist stamps from the 1930s. This is my Shemp Howard collection. There was like a comedy group called the Three Stooges. There was Larry, Curly, and Moe, but there's also Shemp, who I think was the best of them all. Well, he had his own postage stamp series. See, here's pictures of him. That's Shemp Howard with his pictures. They look nice. Oh, look, New Zealand stamps. You ever heard of New Zealand? I have. It's somewhere near Australia. I think it's a little island near the coast of Australia. I know 99% of the population live here and sponge off the taxpayers. Um, yeah. Oh, and Fiji. Dear little Fiji, where people ate their children up until, ooh, not that long ago. Okay, that was stamp collecting. And then the greatest thing of all, the cigar became the cigarette, became highly popular during World War One and World War Two because it, I've been a lifelong smoker and I've suffered anxiety all my life, but it's a stress reliever, definitely. Yeah, it kills you, but it actually, in my case, makes me live longer because I have a family history of aneurysms and early death. An auntie that died at 26, an uncle that died at 40. And what the fuck I'm talking about? Yeah, anxiety, stress reliever, cigarettes. My true love. This is my favourite. This is a Will's cigarette picture card album. And oh, that's another point I wanted to make. This is my favourite one. I'm an absolute lover of trains. I've been from Dusseldorf to Athens in '78. I've been from Sydney to Cairns in the early '80s. Two very long trips. 2 3 day train trips, and not high class in the, in the low class section. So I did manage to get into the high class section on the train going up to Cairns, and I stunk, really bad. I hadn't washed for days, I thought, oh bugger it. I just went up to the first class section and sat next to this girl, and she didn't cringe or anything. I thought, hey, and no one asked any questions, and I went home with her, and well, I don't want to say, yes, it wasn't very nice for her, that's for sure. Now, this is where record collecting really starts. The stamps were too small. These were cigarette cards given away free with little packets of cigarettes. And these, you know, I love the 1930s, even though it was the worst time in history because of World War II and that. But the art, the movies, the music, yes, the music was exceptional. Truly gorgeous, aren't they? So, you know, the seed was planted very early in my case, as in most people my age. Now, you young people in your 50s and 60s, you were born when there were like computers and things, and so you don't know anything about this. This is also something wouldn't know. It's called a pen, and you actually do something like that, and it's sort of like a text or you know, yeah, but good for this though. Then we move on to, oh yes, the mighty boomerang. Australian plane from World War II, a stopgap measure to fight. Well, what a lot of people don't realise is down here in Australia, the whole country was, the population was 6 million. Now 6 million is the population of Sydney. So our war, the Australians went over to help the Pommy bastards in the First World War, and we basically won it for them through Sir John Monash. Look it up, an Australian Jew from Melbourne. He invented the Blitzkrieg. It finished the Germans in World War One. Look it up. Mass tank attack with air support. Look it up, boys and girls. This was 1918 early, or 1917. He invented the Blitzkrieg, a Prussian Jew. Born in Australia, of course. He's an Aussie. So, yeah, we basically won the war for the Pommy bastards and the frogs. The Aussies did. And World War II, we went over to bloody, was it Egypt or some shithole? And Hitler's first defeat in World War II was in North Africa, thanks to the Australians, New Zealanders, Poles, Czechs, a whole bunch, but it was the Aussies that stopped them in their tracks. Then we had to move back to Australia because the damn Japs decided to attack America. Now, this is where this comes in, is that Australia, with such a small population, could not have an air industry. So the story of this plane is, it was a Jewish German refugee came to Australia, and he'd worked at the Messerschmitt factory in Germany pre-war, World War II. So he knew a lot about aerodynamics and engines and shit. This little bugger, this little fellow, was no match for the Japanese Zero early in the war. It could outturn it. It could do some things the Zero couldn't do. I forget what it couldn't do. Maybe it couldn't outturn it. It couldn't outturn a Zero, but it could actually go up higher, and it was well armed, but it was a stopgap. This one's called Home James. Now, this was designed and built in the space of 6 weeks. That's 3 months or less. Not kidding. Based on the Wirraway, which was a trainer based on the plane called the Texas something or other, the 1930s design. But this little burger sort of never shot down a Zero, but it didn't suffer any great losses either. And it was, oh, by the way, this is the paint set that goes with it. Yeah, this little fellow saved Australia's ass in a brief period of a few months before we brought in shitloads of Beaufort, Bristol, Beaufort bombers, and we got some good gear from the Yanks and the Pommies, and then everything evened out. But that little burger became the scourge, or the scourge of the Jap infantry in New Guinea and the South Pacific Islands. It was very, very well armed. It had rockets. It had bloody 30 cals, 50 cals, machine guns. It scared the shit out of the Japs. It was called the I don't know, the silent death. No, it wasn't silent. It was like that Hitler dive bomber that made that noise, you know, Stuka noise. Very scary. Great little plane. You know, it did its job for 6 months and was the terror of the Japanese infantry and helped win the war for us. This and then after I didn't grow out of any of this. I'm obviously still there mentally, but then everything went wrong. Everyone started worshipping these things. They're called pop stars, and that. I saw them in the 90s. They brought out what's his name? Chuck Berry, that creep, not Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, Chuck Berry, completely up themselves, arrogant, and like 50 years out of date. God, it was embarrassing. And this was even worse. I went out for a smoke. The Everly Brothers, there's no Beatles without the Everly Brothers or Buddy Holly. It's as simple as that. They wrote some of their own songs, gorgeous, gorgeous vocals. They hated each other's guts, absolutely despised each other, and yet they made some gorgeous records. This is a signed copy. Obviously, average or below average intelligence. The writing's virtually, yeah, well, whatever. And they were even worse because their voices were still pretty damn good, but they came on with like a pickup band that were trying to do a heavy metal background. Oh Christ, it was awful. It was so awful, so sad. Is that it? Oh, and who could forget these? Wonderful, wonderful. These are my favourites of all. I got a shitload here, but I'm just showing one. This is a Zulu warrior. I love this stuff. God, I love it. So, you young people out there that don't know anything about how things got where they are now, that's just a history lesson. 1224. See ya.